Hello, everybody, and welcome to this GameXplain discussion. Today, we are talking about the nominees for Jeff Keighley's The Game Awards. We're going to start off with Game of the Year right at the top. I'm joined by Joey. I'm joined by Tris. Between us all, we've played all of these games. I'm sure we have some thoughts. Tris, you look at the nominees for Game of the Year. You look at this list right here in front of us. You've got Alan Wake 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. You click on Jeff Keighley's Game Awards link, you see this list. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
The fact that there's 2 Nintendo games, I think for the first time ever. As a contender for Game of the Year. Usually, Nintendo feels like we gotta have one in there. And they just kind of throw one in. Everyone assumed, Breath of the Wild won Game of the Year back in 2017. Everyone assumed, therefore, Tears of the Kingdom was just gonna be the Nintendo pick this year. It made sense. It's another sequel, big anticipated title, really beloved title. Of course, that was going to get in. The fact that there's a second Nintendo title in here, it's Mario Wonder, is a very pleasant surprise because it feels like they're handling it differently this year. They're not looking at Nintendo as, we got to have one.
Well, I think Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey were also nominated Game of the Year in 2017.
Was Mario Odyssey nominated back then? I might be wrong.
Like it was. I wish I could fact check it right now, but I'm just looking around like, oh no, where's my phone?
So let me ask you this. So you see Mario Wonder on there, you see Tears of the Kingdom on there. To you, does that speak more to Nintendo having a superlative year? Or are you on the other end thinking, I feel that maybe this is not great for how the votes are going to shake out?
I actually think it does reflect that Nintendo had a pretty strong year, that they have 2 in here. That, they're up here with everything else, with 2 games, which is a pretty big deal. There was a lot that released this year. Granted, 3 of the nominees came out in the last, 3 weeks? So, 3 of the nominees here came out last month. So, I don't know if I would inherently say a recency bias for that in this case, but it's a matter of half the nominees here are recent games, and the other half are from earlier in the year that have been talked about so much throughout the year that, I think it is fair. I think it is fair. There's something that fits, I guess, under the recency bias, so to say, and then there's something that's been talked about for so long. Of course it's here.
Joey, when you look at this list, is there anything surprising? Is there a title here where you're like, I didn't think that was going to be here?
I'm kind of shocked Mario Wonder's on the list a little bit.
Yeah. Tell me why.
At the same time, because when people were on Twitter were posting like their like what they think is going to be Game of the Year, and I would see Mario Wonder on there, and I'm like, okay, it was good. It wasn't like mind blowing to me, like in the slightest. Like it was just to me it was like, it was better than new Super Mario Bros. Games, but it wasn't like anything where I was just like mind blown or anything like that. But at the same time, I struggled to find anything else that could possibly replace it. So in that sense, I'm surprised and not surprised that it's on the list. But my feelings about this list are, it doesn't matter. One game is going to take it. And I know what it is. I think we all know what it's going to be. It's going to be, I don't know if we're ready to talk about that yet, but
oh, okay.
That's what I think about.
No, I'd love to jump right into that. Joe, you think there's an obvious winner on this list?
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because it's the one game on this list I have not played at all. I've played everything on this list but Baldur's Gate 3. And I think that's just a shoo-in. There's no chance anything else has taken this award except Baldur's Gate 3.
Do you feel, Joey, you're somebody that's deeply involved in video games. You have not played Baldur's Gate 3. I think Baldur's Gate 3 is kind of like a classic PC experience. This top-down, like, CRPG, I think is what we typically go for. Don't you think that there's a chance that many of the people voting here have simply, maybe not enough of them have played Baldur's Gate 3 for it to get the votes needed to win?
I'm not sure, because I feel like a lot of people because we're talking about the jury, right? Because I think the fan vote only counts for maybe like 10% of the vote. I think that's the number. So I in that sense, I don't think it matters that much. But I think a lot of people in games media have played Baldur's Gate 3. The people who are voting on this jury, and I think like in that sense, it is going to take it because it came out in June, I think, right? June is when it came out, June, July, and I haven't, and 6 months have passed, or 6 months by the time the Game Awards comes out. I have not seen a single negative thing spoken about this game. And like everything else on this list, I have heard some negativity. Not to mention, Baldur's Gate 3 is the #1 highest rated game like on Metacritic this year. So cool. I definitely think like, even though I haven't played it, I know I've seen a lot of people just say nothing but positivity about this game, and that's why I think it's going to take it. It just won the gold. I think it was the Golden Joysticks. It just won Game of the Year for that outlet too, or not outlet, that award show. So I definitely think it's going to win here as well.
Yeah, I definitely think Baldur's Gate 3 is like the one to win. Even though it's not my personal pick with it, I have seen and heard so much about that game and the moment surrounding that game. Because that really is so much of what the Game Awards is. It's how much of a moment these games made. Baldur's Gate 3 moment feels like it hasn't ended yet. It's what Breath of the Wild was in 2017, where people were still talking about it at the end of the year.
Yep.
So I played Baldur's Gate 3. And I'm a big fan. I think it rules. I figure, hey, we're having this discussion. I figure we could talk about these games.
I just felt like you were
bit.
leading into it like, so I've actually played Baldur's Gate 3, and let me tell you, it's not that good. But then
can I tell you
exactly where I thought you were going?
Julia, you made this comment where you were like, I haven't seen any like negative criticism of it, and I get where you're coming from there. I also think that like the game is so great that I think it overshadows its own faults. Its own the own things wrong with it. Like when it came out, like when I was playing it originally, when it got out of early access at least, it the second act was pretty buggy, and the third act was like extremely buggy to the point of like people being like, hey, maybe just like take your time in Act 1, dog, and then and things have gotten smoother and smoother. And the thing is you could say that here because you could spend a lifetime in Act 1, so it's fine. But the compliment that I would like to pay to Baldur's Gate 3 is that I think it is the first video game I've ever played where the story never stops. There is not a moment in that game where I'm not doing something that I don't feel is part of the narrative, which is insane. Like every item I pick up, every person I talk to, every movement I make, every direction I go in, every moment of battle, I feel like I am watching a story unfold, and that story is like layered and meaningful. It is a game that made me better understand my friends that play Dungeons and Dragons. I have a point of connection with them now, and I'm like, oh, okay, you play Dungeons and Dragons. I'm sure you've heard of. There's this video game, Baldur's Gate 3, and they're like, oh yeah, and let me like tell you all about 5th edition, which is the rule set that the game uses, and like being able to talk to them and understand them and appreciate like why they like D&D through this video game. It's like a transcendent experience. So yeah, like hats off to Baldur's Gate 3. Just like really, really cool. And also, I mentioned earlier it's kind of like a PC game. This game is like on PlayStation. It's
it's coming out on Xbox too.
Coming to Xbox.
They had to push it back because they were trying to figure out the Series S version.
S. Right. So like hats off to them. I've played it on PC. I think I like it there more, but the controller support is actually really good. And it's like a fine way to play the game. So if you have a PS5 and you're considering it, like I totally recommend it. I've got some people in my life, like my brother will never play a game on PC. I'm like I was almost like brother, as if he's not my brother. Like brother,
my brother in Christ.
I was like, hey, you gotta play this game on PS5. So yeah, just tip of the cap to Baldur's Gate 3. I think we all kind of agree that's what we foresee being the winner.
Yeah, and I think I'll wait to play it until it comes out on Switch too.
So listen, I don't think that is out of the question.
Right.
This studio's last game, Divinity Original Sin 2, is on Switch. And if you want an experience like Baldur's Gate 3, great video game on Switch, great port.
I believe Baldur's Gate 2 is on Switch as well.
No, they all are. All those games. There's like a whole collection of
nice.
So pretty cool stuff on Switch over there. But so I kind of want to ask now, because we all kind of agree, but Tears of the Kingdom. You both don't think this has a chance at taking it, just because I feel the Breath of the Wild win that year was so oppressive. On just anecdotally on Twitter, if I had to say like what I see the most people talking about, I think it's Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom is my personal game of the year, and I think it's, of everything on this list, I think it's the one that could beat out Baldur's Gate, because I think score-wise, like Metacritic score, like Joey mentioned, it was a big deal when Baldur's Gate surpassed Tears of the Kingdom, but both of them are very high up there. And I think that is the other one that really stands a chance that, maybe it does have a wider audience of people that played it that will vote for it more so than Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate might be considered too close to D&D and therefore niche to a lot of people, whereas Zelda's Zelda. That's entirely possible. I think, also the fact that Breath of the Wild did win Game of the Year might give this one the leg up of more people going to be looking directly at it of, well, I mean, if the first game won, maybe, yeah, let's more closely look at this one. Does the sequel also deserve to win?
Yeah, I understand your thinking there. But Breath of the Wild was such a big deal in that it was like the first of its kind. Right?
Exactly.
It was like the very first type of Zelda game. Yeah, heck, even like very first type of open world type of game of its kind. Tears of the Kingdom just felt like, for better or worse, Breath of the Wild 2.0, which it literally is. It's a sequel to Tears of the Kingdom. I mean, sequel to Breath of the Wild. But in that sense, it's kind of like how God of War won Game of the Year 2018. But
right.
God of War Ragnarok did not. Instead, Elden Ring won that. And that was because of, for various reasons, God of War Ragnarok won a bunch of technical awards, but Elden Ring was just overall the better game, in my opinion. Yeah. But Ragnarok was also kind of that same thing of, okay, God of War 2018 was super, innovative for its time, super, for the franchise. It was the first time people were exposed to this kind of thing. Ragnarok was just more of that. And in that sense, it was less less impactful in that way, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to get at here. Tears of the Kingdom doesn't feel as impactful as Breath of the Wild, and now that we're a few months removed from that game, you're starting to see a lot of criticisms pop up about it, such as an hour and a half long discussion from GameXplain about how it's not that great. But I think that's why I still think it does have more of a chance than the other entries on this list. Except for Baldur's Gate 3, of course. But I still think Baldur's Gate 3 is going to take that victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, Joey, what you're zoning in on there is whether or not something is genre-defining. And, Tears of the Kingdom are in not in the way that Breath of the Wild was, for open-world games, kind of reimagining what an open-world game looks like. And with something like God of War 2018, that, narrative experience and, I think the directorial vision for that game was something that hadn't really been done in that kind of AAA that single player kind of Sony game that we've been chasing for more than a decade now. So, and I think in that regard, when you look at genre defining games, Baldur's Gate 3 it kind of feels like that for what they're doing. And I think that's maybe why we're zoning in on it. But was I correct in thinking that the number 2 spot is Tears of the Kingdom, or do either of you think that maybe there's a better contender if it wasn't Baldur's Gate 3?
I could also see maybe Alan Wake 2 sweeping in.
I agree. No, wait, are you kidding or are you serious? I think
I'm
so
actually
too.
serious.
Yeah.
But I'm also,
okay.
It's so weird to me. It's seeing this game get so many nominations,
right.
including Game of the Year. Alan Wake 2 feels like a game that was made for me and me alone. When I play that game, a lot of people call this a horror game similar to Resident Evil. I've even used that a bunch of times. But Resident Evil and games like Dead Space 2 are also just more approachable than Alan Wake 2 is. Alan Wake 2, you go in there, it's not just horror. It is weird. It is a weird game. It's basically the video game equivalent of Everything Everywhere All at Once, if that makes sense. Because that movie just also felt like one of those movies where it's just this is made for a very weird niche of people. You get moments in that movie where there's some serious heartfelt stuff next to a lady literally using her Pomeranian dog as a weapon. This is a bizarre movie, and in that sense, Alan Wake 2 is also a bizarre video game. And it's kind of surprising to see not this game on the Game of the Year lists, but also I've seen a bunch of people on Twitter who I didn't even know were Alan Wake fans, where they just jumped into this series, immediately praise this as their Game of the Year. I'm are my tastes not that unique anymore? Did everyone adopt my weird, unique tastes into weird Remedy games?
Well, Joey, I think you're speaking to something that I think is a factor in these kinds of competitions and award shows. I think when we look to award something Game of the Year, I think it has to have a certain level of, forgive me for this, but contrived prestige. Okay,
Okay.
Stay with me. Okay, so when an Oscar quality movie is playing a trailer in front of you, because the game is kind of the movie rather is trying to signal to you this is deep and serious and important, that kind of stuff. And
right.
I kind of think that Alan Wake 2 has a little bit of we're doing something artistic. This is something unique and individual, and there's a thumbprint on this game that is not quite the corporate thumbprint that we're used to in the video game space. And I think that that's important, and I think that's something that makes it distinct from a game like your Spider-Man 2 or your Mario Wonders. You know, it doesn't have that Oscar quality to it. And I do think that that's important, and I think a lot of the people voting on the critics board probably want to, in a weird way, elevate themselves and elevate the medium and be like, this is the game that represents us, not the colorful Mario game where you jump from left to right.
Yeah, this is definitely a game where Epic Games, the publisher, gave Remedy Entertainment like millions of dollars and just were hands off. They just said, go nuts. We're not going to give you any like notes. No notes, Sam Lake. Just go crazy. And then they just put in a musical number in this survival horror game. It is absolutely, this game is nuts, man. And it's great to see it on this list. And getting nominated for like 8 categories too, which that's not surprising. This game's a technical marvel. Like, it's one of the best looking games of this generation, period. Yeah. It is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I love it.
It's deserved. It's deserved. It's just a matter of, I think, it being the game it is, it still feels slightly surprising for it to be in this front and center.
Yeah.
Arguably in the same way Stray was last year. It's that surprising spot. Not quite.
Stray was a bad video game. So
thank you, Jake. Thank you.
Stray is not a good. It's not fun.
I'm not saying it is the exact same game. I'm saying it has that same kind of surprise at being here that Stray does.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but like at least Alan Wake 2 is a good video game.
Yes.
I know what you mean, Tris. Totally. Jake and I just have grievances over Stray being nominated for so much for doing so little.
I understand.
Dude, I think that is almost the epitome of what I'm talking about, where sometimes people just want to elevate things because they think
that's why I bring it up. That's why I bring it up.
Dude, it's like, oh, this is hoity-toity. You just don't get it, dude. It's actually operating on all these levels. And I just want to say, looking at this whole list, I do think it's pretty cool that we're not seeing a bunch of one thing. You know, like there's a 2D side scroller on here. There's kind of like that Sony third-person action game that's been, you know, a repeat offender year after year. Yeah. You've got like the strategy game in Baldur's Gate 3, that strategy-heavy RPG. You've got a remake in Resident Evil 4. You've got Alan Wake 2, which I think is totally its own thing. And you've got Tears of the Kingdom, which I think the reasons that people are praising Tears of the Kingdom are not things that exist in other video games. So, you know, so kind of cool to look at the year in games like this. And my question for you now, and I'll start because I've got one on the dome here, is there anything that you're disappointed is not one of these 6? Because I've got one and I'm like devastated about it.
Tell me, because I don't have an answer.
I want to hear.
Yeah. So if we're talking genre defining, I really am disappointed Street Fighter 6 is not here. I think I have my grievances with Street Fighter 6. Even though nobody else had this grievance, I did not like the single player mode. I thought it was stupid. So, but other people liked it. So other people liked it so much, it makes me question even more why it's not here, because it's not up to me. But yeah. But what that game did for fighting games, for the Street Fighter franchise, I think it pushed the genre forward. And from its controls to like the way it imagined its different character archetypes, its balancing, its even like from art design, just like looking at the game, it's I think that game is a victim of being in the fighting game genre. And that just being a niche genre inherently when compared to kind of these more general audience video games. But it's I gotta tell you, it's something that like when I'm talking about like video game critics though, we're not looking at these things as consumers. We're looking at them as on a slightly different level as critics. And I'm a little disappointed that like critically it's not getting that level of attention. I'm a little disappointed in that, yeah. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to the indie game conversation. But So for me, it's Street Fighter 6. But for either of you, is there a title that you kind of wish was here? Yeah.
It's not so a title that I wish was here, more so one I'm surprised wasn't, because of how much it was talked about throughout the year. I'm actually very surprised Starfield is not in here.
Oh, I forgot.
I have nonstop heard about
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised at all.
No, I'm not surprised. Like that, like with how it is.
I hear
came
you.
out, but it's a matter of that game. That game was a moment for so long, and how much it was talked about, and all the lead up and everything. It's shocking that it just isn't, because the Game Awards notoriously constantly has games, not even just a Game of the Year, but like throughout its nominees that many people don't necessarily consider good, but just had such a moment surrounding the game, so much conversation surrounding the game, that it just warranted them being there. So Starfield not being here is surprising to me. As someone who knows nothing about Starfield, but constantly heard about it for more than a year, like it's baffling to me.
Let me tell you something. I played this game. I played about 25 hours of this game. I beat the main story because I heard that's what you should really do first.
Yeah.
And after I beat the main story, the new game plus loops you into like something unique. Spoilers, I guess. I don't know. But the things I love about Bethesda games wasn't really present here in Starfield. I loved the exploration in Skyrim, even sometimes in Fallout as well. Starfield was there was just too many dang planets to explore. They all felt procedurally generated, which I think they are, most of them. And the exploration just didn't feel fun. It didn't feel rewarding. I enjoyed like some quests that were more contained, like in towns it kind of felt like cyberpunk-ish in that sense. But the more time goes on from this game, the more I'm like, wow, I really don't care to play this game again. Like, and I care to replay Bethesda games like Skyrim, of course, and I'm good at playing like a Fallout 4 playthrough again. But Starfield, I'm just like, oh, they really just threw a bunch of things onto a dartboard, and like all of them stuck, and it was. And the game suffered for it to a fault. Like, maybe give me 10 planets instead of 1,000. Who thought that was a good idea? Really?
I gotta tell you, Joey, as a selling point, if you tell me 10 planets instead of 1,000, I am more excited by 10.
Yes.
Because that to me is like, oh wow, that's like a choice. They like said, we're doing 10
That's an achievable
planets.
number too. Like,
yeah,
you
it's
could
like,
realistically go explore all 10 of them.
Yeah. And I also think something interesting going on here is because, Tris, I think you're 100% right about that game being a moment. I think what it actually is the expression of a Microsoft marketing budget showing up. Because I genuinely, I really feel like it is kind of like, in my opinion, I'm glad that it's not on this list because Jeff Keighley could have made there be 7 nominees or 8 nominees. This was a big year. There are a ton of games that you could have fit on. And to me, I'm like, oh, okay. I'm glad we don't feel obligated to be like, here's the big Microsoft title. Here's the, you know what I mean? It has to be equally represented. It's like, no, we're not playing that game. So I'm kind of glad that it's here because I think if it was based on marketing budgets alone, we would see Starfield here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Do we feel like we can move on to another category?
I do have one question for you guys about Game of the Year specifically. Because I know, because I've already seen some debate about this online. How do you guys feel about Resident Evil 4 remake being?
I was about to ask that too. I didn't hear this debate when Resident Evil 2 was nominated.
That's exactly why I wonder. That's exactly why
I wonder why they're bringing this up now. It is a bit bizarre. I think maybe because Resident Evil 2 felt like a completely different game than the original Resident Evil 2, because that was like a fixed camera angle horror game. Like, it felt like a complete new game in general. Resident Evil 4, though there was still a lot different about it. You can maybe say, like, okay, it's not that different from Resident Evil 4, even though it is, because those controls aren't garbage anymore. Sorry! Yeah, I do feel like maybe that they could have swapped this out with something else, but at the same time, I struggle to think of what. But, I don't know, I feel like remakes, like, depending on how much of a remake they are, and that's where you get into another slippery slope. It's like, what is a remake, what is not? The Last of Us Part 1, technically a remake, but very similar to the first game. Metroid, but in that case, why don't you call Metroid Prime Remastered a remake, too? Very strange stuff, but Resident Evil 4 definitely feels more like a remake in this regard, and for that sense, I feel like it is eligible to be nominated for Game of the Year here.
Yeah, it's funny. I almost care. I almost like think anything is eligible. I almost don't care. Because to me, part of like understanding any piece of art in any medium is like partly it's the art itself, and then part of it is understanding the context of the time. So like now we're examining this version of Resident Evil 4 or whatever game as it pertained to the year 2023. And like, I think some games we examined differently. For example, this is an easy example to make, but like the year that the pandemic happened, I think that played a role in how we understood and experienced games because context matters. It's the same reason that like, if you remember back in high school, we would like read Shakespeare plays and we would talk about like, oh, this is kind of like what Shakespeare was talking about at the time. This is why he wrote this play. And it helps in your understanding of that moment of experiencing that art. So yeah, I think I almost think that part of it does so much work that it is new. It is new because there was no context besides this one. So, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. So I kind of want to jump to. Let's just. Do you want to jump best indie game? Do people feel good about that?
Let's do it. Let's get
Best-
started,
okay.
Jake.
Let's
Tell
get
me what's
started.
on your mind.
Best indie or best debut indie?
Best independent game. Best
Okay.
independent game. Okay. So the nominees here are Cocoon, Dave the Diver, Dredge, Sea of Stars, and Viewfinder. And I just kind of want to get this out of the way right at the top. There's stuff going on. The zeitgeist, the people, the discourse are talking about Dave the Diver because is this an indie game? Is this not an indie game? This was. And the whole kind of point of contention here is that Dave the Diver was financed by like a huge corporation with with tons of corporate money, and in theory does not assume the same kind of risk, nor do they have the same kinds of non-corporate creative control that what we typically understand to be an independent game would have. And I've seen some people in our space, in our critical space, kind of go back and forth about this, and I'm putting my flag in the ground because it started to make me upset. And I'm just gonna say what I want to say. And I feel that the pushback here has been, but indie game has taken on a new kind of meaning outside of being a independent game in like the true definition of the word. And I think people are like, oh, it's about scope, it's about art style, it's about the amount of people that made it, it's about all of this stuff, blah 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 blah. And I feel that these people are like doing something bad for gaming. I genuinely feel that there is like a malicious undertone to this, because the fact of the matter is that the Dave the Diver marketing team wants you to think it's an indie game. They are expressly interested in that. And I feel that if you are falling for it, one, what you are doing is all that stuff I said about what we understand to be an indie game or what some people think it is, that is through the lens of a consumer. It's when you play the game. I am not looking at anything, not any of the small text. I'm looking at the game. In my head, the vibes and the scope of this game seem like an indie game, so I'm going to call it that. And the second you're doing that, you are no longer a critic in my eyes. You have decided that is not important to you, that context does not matter. And the whole point of why we even identify independent games is because it's about the difference in business prerogatives, divorced from corporate financing. And when you dilute that distinction, you are not only doing what the marketing team for that game wants to do, but you are making it harder for actual indie games to get the platform and compete in this space in a meaningful way. And I think you're making diminutive the successes that those games do have and everything those games are trying to achieve. So it makes me upset when you've got this corporate backer for this game. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sure a lot of people worked super hard on this game. I'm sure they did. And hats off to them. It sounds like you made a great game. But the truth is, you are not assuming the same risks that actual independent games are assuming. And that's the whole point of why we even identify them. So so it to me, like, I need some people to I understand how hard it is. You say something on social media, you take a stance, and you don't want to backpedal. But like, re-examine why you think you're calling this game an indie game. Please, for the love of God. Okay. That's my rant.
No,
that's
absolutely
you said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay.
No. But it's
any
just
thoughts
like
on this?
if you're calling if you're calling this game an indie, then I guess Super Mario Wonder's an indie. Then I guess Metroid Dread's an indie. Like, if that in your eyes, then it's bizarre. And you did say it better than I could have. Like, the risk that these indie developers take, like, a lot of these games are made by one guy, one person, and it's made over like 10 years sometimes, because like they also have to work a 9 to 5 or less, and like, you take, by calling Dave the Diver an indie, you essentially take away struggles like that, or like stories like that, I should say.
And it really affects the perspective of indies, like, as a whole too, like, you know, because then it's okay, well, if this indie game has this kind of quality, this kind of work put into it, why don't the other ones? You know, when looking at it from a consumer, you're going to see a lot of people trying to compare it in that way, because they're not getting the full perspective. Because a lot of people already do that with indie games.
Yep. That's
to add this into the mix really makes it harder.
Yeah, and I think like something important to talk about too is that Baldur's Gate 3 is an indie game.
Yeah.
And like part of the reason that game exists and the game exists in the form that it exists in now is because it did not have to answer to a corporate board of people that were demanding results and that were demanding like what, you know, certain benchmarks be hit at a certain time. Like I'm pretty sure the director of that game is like the head of that studio and shit. Like it's to not acknowledge that and to not acknowledge like how the systems in which our games are made and how they are set up to succeed and how they are set up to fail, I think is just doing a disservice to the whole thing. So
Right. If this game wins this category, I will leave
mad,
the room.
Joey. So mad. Yeah.
I will go,
yeah.
but I feel like maybe Sea of Stars is probably going to take this one. From what I've been hearing about Sea of Stars.
If not Sea of Stars, I would also be very happy to see Viewfinder, because Viewfinder is so like unique and interesting to me that I think it's such a interesting idea that I think you only see explored in indie games.
Yeah, I still need to pick up Viewfinder. That game there's something about that game that just like titillates
It speaks to me.
Yeah,
It speaks to me.
Yes. I need like the PSVR 2 version. That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, seriously though.
Fair.
My goodness. Yeah. But for what it's worth, this is a very good list of games.
Oh, 100%.
Like, even
and
if we take-
I gotta play Cocoon. Everybody's telling me I would like Cocoon, so that's the one
I gotta play. I gotta play Cocoon 2. Every game on this list, even Dave the Diver, even though it's not an indie, like I've just heard people just praise up the wazoo. Like even though I regrettably haven't played any of them except Dave the Diver, like Sea of Stars, people lost their minds over. Viewfinder,
Yeah.
Tom lost his mind over.
Yep.
And Dredge, I still need to check out Dredge. Yeah, and everyone's talking about Cocoon, and I definitely need to pick that up too.
Sea of Stars definitely gets a bump too for being a free PlayStation Plus game. I feel
And
like
Game
maybe
Pass.
that. Oh, and Game Pass. So yeah, so
And
I feel
Game
like a
Pass,
lot of
yeah.
people probably played that one. What this list shows me though is that nobody played Bomb Rush Cyberpunk, because everybody I know that did play that game is like obsessed with it.
Yep. I have several
yeah.
friends obsessed with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it was that game was maybe criminally underplayed. So that's the one I'm surprised isn't here. Is there anything you guys played this year that's like you're like, oh man, I would have liked to see that here? It's tough. It was long.
I was thinking that, and then I decided to check, and what was going to be on my list there is actually in Best Debut Indie, which I don't quite understand the difference between the two. I think it's Debut Indie. It's the first game by that studio.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
I think it
Okay.
makes sense why it would be there and not in this one.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
you see that in kind of like other award shows, like you get like best debut album kind of stuff.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah,
But
let's
Pizza
look at
Tower is
that.
what you're thinking
Yes.
of. You're thinking of Pizza
Oh,
Tower.
Pizza
Okay.
Tower.
So
Yes.
yeah. So moving into best debut indie game, which is funny because I guess Dave the Diver was not qualified for this one. But Cocoon, Dredge, Pizza Tower, Venba, and Viewfinder. So the new ones here are Pizza Tower and Venba. And Tris, you're saying Pizza Tower's got the sauce.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Got the sauce.
No, I've heard, like, Pizza Tower had its moment. Like, the same way
Yeah.
I talk about with, like, Game of the Year stuff. Pizza Tower was a moment that throughout the entire year I constantly heard talked about. I've seen different streamers play it. I've seen nothing but praise for this game. Having played some of it myself, it's wacky as heck.
Yeah.
it's very silly, very fun. I have several friends obsessed with the game. Like, that game really is its own moment as well.
If
And
it doesn't get announced on Switch at the Indie World tomorrow, I
I'm
will
really
be
hoping
upset.
it does.
No,
I'm really hoping
mark
it
my
does.
words. This is 100% a Hollow Knight situation where it was out on other platforms, maybe didn't get the buzz, and then it like comes out on Switch and stuff, and everybody's like, "Oh, whoa, actually though." And then next year you're gonna have all these people being like, "Yo, can we nominate the pizza game?" You know? And it's that yeah. So I totally see that for this game. I think it's got a bright future ahead of it. Hopefully they can get that on Switch.
Hopefully.
Is there a before I pick one? Is there a category either one of you would like to jump into? I've got a few
Should we
more.
go to Best Family Game?
Oh, I love Best Family Game.
yes.
Yeah, that's usually a category not dominated by a Nintendo nomination.
That's correct. No.
And
yeah.
so far, there's only 2 nominations here.
So
I think
we've
I think it has actually historically been dominated by I think there was 1 year, I think, where it was 4 out of 5 were Nintendo games.
Yes.
And the last one was another game released on the Switch, but it wasn't a Nintendo game.
Our nominees for Best Family Game are Disney Illusion Island, Party Animals, Pikmin 4, Sonic Superstars, and Super Mario Brothers Wonder. The only one of these I haven't played yet is Party Animals, but I will get to that soon for sure. Joey, who is the winner of Best Family Game?
I mean, my winner or the Game Awards winner? Because I think we all know the Game Awards winner is going to be Mario Wonder.
You think so?
Yeah, and it might be my vote too. Pikmin 4, I don't like. It's cute and friendly. Is it a family game though?
It is not.
Family game is so. I
It's
don't
a strategy
like it as
game.
Do they have like a for the best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre or platform? Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't know if Pikmin 4 fits. Because to me, it's like maybe if they changed the description to like it's a great game for people of all ages to play. Like then I'd be like, okay, that's fine. That's cool. But the way that they have it said here for family play, like, I don't know, to me that implies multiplayer.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the Pikmin 4 multiplayer is nothing to write home about.
No.
Okay, so what are we doing? You know, so I don't know. I'm not, nothing's coming to mind in terms of what I would put there instead off the top of my head. Do either of you is there something I'm not thinking of that had some
Not really.
multiplayer this year?
I think this list makes sense why it's here.
Yeah.
Why the game's
I'd even
here.
put like the Wario game over it, honestly.
That's right.
Oh
my god.
I think it's
It was
a little
too
too
late.
recent. I
It
think
was
the
too late,
cutoff.
yeah.
I think the cutoff is November 1st.
Oh,
Then,
okay.
Then, man, maybe like.
Pokemon for the DLC.
You know
like,
what,
I don't
Tris?
know.
Tris,
Like-
it can't be too late because there's a nominee coming in for best fighting game that released after Wario.
Oh, that's
right. That's
Let's go to the
right.
fighting games right now.
Yeah.
All
let's
right,
do it.
okay, all right. So nothing
do
more
it.
on best family game. I want to
No,
give a
not
shout
really.
out to Disney Illusion Island. That's a sweet little game.
Was that good?
That's-
I was kind of
yeah.
I was kind of sad because it looked like Rayman Legends, but it was a puzzle. It's like a puzzle platformer, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the thing
Okay.
I give to Disney Illusion Island is that I actually think they did a good job of literally making a family game. Like I see the stuff that they put in there to make it easier for kids to play. So I are designing it with kids in mind. So even the way that the game's kind of like zoomed out, and you know how sometimes in Mario you run into that issue where like one player's moving ahead and you kind of get squished. Yeah, I think they actually were like, let's tune that a little bit and let's like design it in a way that won't happen as much. So I don't know. It's just my own thoughts, but what were we going to next? Best fighting game?
Best
Fighting game, yep.
Best
game.
fighting game. The nominees are God of Rock, Mortal Kombat 1, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, Pocket Bravery, and Street Fighter 6. As a fighting game sicko, I've played all of these. So, Tris, what do you see when you look at this list?
I am actually, since this was kind of our segue in, I'm actually kind of surprised Nick Brawl 2 is here. Not because the game doesn't deserve to, but just it just came out. Like it just came out.
Right.
So it makes me feel like they were struggling to find what to put in, because it does make me wonder when is the cutoff. If a game just came out like a week ago, is it worth being in here? Is there too much of a recency bias kind of thing? But admittedly, I have not heard of God of Rock or Pocket Bravery.
Me either.
I've not actually heard of
Can I tell
them.
you something though?
So,
God of Rock is a bad video game. So maybe I should rephrase. It's not for me. Because it's kind of like a rhythm game, fighting game hybrid. And for me, it like doesn't really deliver on either one of those. I was kind of disappointed by it. I would be surprised if somebody wants to check. If it has a Metacritic above like 65, I would be shocked. So like that's no, like not being based on my opinion, but I don't think anybody really was like, oh, this is a fantastic game.
Gotcha.
I'm looking it up right now. God of Rock Metacritic score, I've got it right here, 62.
Wow.
So yeah, so like to see a game with a 62 Metacritic score on the game of the Game Awards nominees.
Yeah.
I listen. Hats off to these critics for thinking for themselves. I appreciate that. Shout out, like that's good for them. Pocket Bravery, nice little game. That's on all platforms. You can get that on Switch. Cool game.
Okay.
Street Fighter 6 is definitely my pick here, though.
Yeah,
it's,
same.
It's just a masterclass in fighting games. I prefer NetherRealm fighting games, just because that's kind of what I grew up with and that's what I know. So I love Mortal Kombat 1. I think it has the obviously superior single-player mode, no question. Amazing story mode, Mortal Kombat 1, against the dookie story mode in Street Fighter 6. But if anybody was like, I want to get into a fighting game, which one do I pick? The onboarding process for Street Fighter 6, it has never been easier to get into a fighting game, and that's awesome. And it's just awesome. The every one of these fighting games has like a main gimmick that they do. With the Street Fighter 6, it's like the drive meter, the drive impact, that kind of stuff. Easy to understand, easy to execute, high skill ceiling in terms of using it like to the best way possible. But yeah, so much good stuff to say about Street Fighter 6, man. I think it's gonna run away with this, no question.
But what would you pick?
I'd pick Street Fighter 6.
Okay.
I'd pick Street Fighter 6. I obviously love Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2. I think it'll be high on my personal Game of the Year list for sure. But I also just like love platform fighters. It's probably my favorite genre in video games, and I kind of love Nickelodeon. I love SpongeBob. So you know what I mean. So it's kind of it's kind of the same way I feel about Multiverses letting me be Superman, a platform fighter. I'm like, we're just making platform fighters for all my favorite characters. Like I'm down with that.
Remember Multiverses?
Dude, it's gonna have a big year next year, baby.
Expect
to see it back at the Game Awards 2024, baby. Yeah.
I hope it has a good comeback. I hope so.
It is. Confidence is high. But yeah, any thoughts on best fighting game from either of you?
I do agree with you about Street Fighter. I think that game had its biggest moment this year. I think out of all these, it was one of the biggest moment, and it's the one I consistently see the most people have the most fun with. So
yeah. Joey, we had some fun playing Nick Brawl too, though. You and me.
We totally did.
We did.
Oh yeah, that online was seamless. Take notes, Smash Bros.
Oh, Smash Brothers, please take notes, please. I kind of want to take us over to. I think this is a surprising one, but I want to take us over to best performance.
Okay.
Yeah. So the nominees for best performance are Ben Starr, Final Fantasy 16, Cameron Monaghan for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, Idris Elba for Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. Will Idris Elba make an appearance at the Game Awards? Who's to say? Melanie LeBird for Alan Wake 2, Neil Newbon for Baldur's Gate 3, and Yuri Lowenthal for Marvel Spider-Man 2. And I wanted to take us here because I feel that this is... I don't remember best performance being this stacked. This is nasty, dude. I'm like, it's
nasty, but it's also kind of inconsistent. I feel like.
Tell me why.
What are we really nominating the best acting performance here, or are we just in it for the memes? Let's talk about Ben Starr.
Let's talk about Ben Starr. Yeah,
had his moment this year.
Yeah,
playing.
Clive?
I forgot Clive. Thank you.
Clive.
I played this game to completion and I forgot his name.
Okay. Yep.
He's not that good. I'm sorry, but it's not. I don't even know if it's that he's not that good. But like the material he is working with, it's Final Fantasy. It's cheesy. He does do a really good scream though. I'll give him that. Also, I love Alan Wake 2. I don't play it for its acting. None of the actors in Alan Wake games are particularly amazing, and Melanie LeBird's one of them. And Idris Elba, he's a celebrity. I don't know if stacking celebrities in with these other like non-AAA actors is really fair. I don't know. I feel this is a very inconsistent nomination list. If that makes sense.
There's a snub on this list, Joey.
I have
who?
Wait, Tris, you got one?
I was gonna say I have a question for you, Jake, especially because of how much you loved Spider-Man 2. I haven't finished it yet. Is it wrong for Yuri Lowenthal to be here for Peter Parker, but not the actor for Miles?
Oh snap!
Okay, here's what's going on with that. Let me tell you what's going on. The problem with it with Miles is that Miles has extremely stiff contemporary competition in the modern Spider-Verse movies. And I think that probably weighs down a lot of people's opinions of what the Miles actor is doing. Even though personally I might agree with that, I think there's a lot of people that those movies are so good that they'll always say in their heads, well, I prefer the guy doing it in those movies. So I think that's probably the differentiation there. Honestly, for me, for Spider-Man, it's not quite, maybe this would be wrong to do for performance, but the combination of performance and the audio design of Venom in Spider-Man 2 can't be beat. I feel it is unbelievably well done. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Honestly, I'd probably give Yuri Lowenthal the vote. Like his performance in Spider-Man was very, very good.
Agreed. The man's
But I think Ben Starr is going to take it because memes.
Okay, can I tell you my snub for this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I understand people have problems with the material. I understand people have problems with the game. But do you need to be in a good game to have the best performance? That is my question as I submit. Ella Balinska, the voice of Frey in Forspoken.
Oh, man.
I feel that she is a good actress.
Fair.
And I she embodied the role. I don't know what to say. Like I thought I think if you were just like there in the studio watching all these people act, I think she'd run away with it. But obviously that's not it. And so much goes into a performance that's like,
right.
You know what I mean? Would any of us remember the Luke, I am your father, or whatever the actual line is, if it wasn't for the music and the way it was directed and all that stuff? You know, we barely even remember the line. Was it the writing? Was it the acting? Was it the way? You know, so much stuff goes into performance. Do memes go into performance? Maybe. And I guess that's what we're gonna find out with whoever wins this one.
So,
if I had to pick somebody to win, though, I kind of think Yuri's gonna get it. Actually,
I would give it to Yuri. My concern, because you mentioned it, is that it'll go to Idris Elba because people will open this up, see him in, and they go, "Oh, it's Idris Elba," and just give it to him.
It's so weird.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
I do think, by the way, not to go into full predictions, I do think he's going to be at the Game Awards, though. Like, I don't know if all of them will be.
I feel like
but I do think
presenting.
he will be. Yeah, I do think he will be because, I mean, now that like Strike's went over and everything, we're probably going to hear something about Sonic or Knuckles or whatever he's in.
Oh yeah, good call, dude. Knuckles show, little promo, Knuckles show. Yeah.
I could
Knuckles
see
show
that.
a little promo.
Yeah. Is there a category anybody wants to go to next?
I think I'm good. I think we've about
good?
covered all our bases here.
Let's see.
Okay.
I think so. Unless there's anything really standing out to you, Jake.
There is a category maybe that I want to look at just for a little bit, if just for one game.
Yeah.
And this is, I've noticed this also has been kind of a controversial category. Where is it? Best strategy game. Where is?
Oh, okay.
Best
I see.
Sim
It's best
strategy.
sim/strategy.
Right below.
The nominees are Advance Wars 1+2, Reboot Camp, City Skylines 2, Company of Heroes 3, Fire Emblem Engage, and Pikmin 4. And Joey, why'd you want to come here?
For 3 Nintendo nominations. That's insane. I didn't
Yeah.
notice that. I part of me hopes it's Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp just because that game needs something. That game launched to the most quietest whimper ever.
Yeah,
and
it really
deserved
did.
to launch. It deserved to launch with a bang. It deserved to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But about
Why is
also been
Baldur's
hearing-
Gate 3 not here? Do I not
don't
understand
know.
what this means?
Maybe
I
because
guess
they're
I
like,
just don't
we
know
don't want-
genres.
Maybe because they don't want Baldur's Gate 3 to like take every category it's in. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
But
they put it in
it's-
the RPG bucket.
But
yeah.
apparently there's a lot of other like really good strategy games. I heard this on Twitter from like strategy game Twitter, which I don't really follow that much. But there's been a lot of good strategy games this year that this category snubbed. I guess Dune Spice Wars was one of them.
Oh wow.
So yeah, I don't know if you guys in the comments know anything more about this. Let me know.
Yeah. One
That's
I just want to
interesting.
hit on really quick is best RPG.
all right.
Only because I am like distressed that Octopath Traveler 2 is not here.
Yeah. That's weird.
Octopath Traveler 2 is one of the most slept on games of this year. I am willing to say it's one of the best JRPGs of all time. That is how strongly I feel about that game. It is like, dang, dude. If you want the quote is it's the Elden Ring of JRPGs.
Oh wow.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wait,
So
Starfield's
just
in
a
this
little.
list.
Starfield's on this list too.
Starfield's
Man.
in this one.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Genres
Wow.
are weird. They're.
Yes.
I have a whole rant about genres, but I won't subject our sweet audience to that either. Just another weird one, a little shout out. I always think this is a funny category. Best adaptation.
Oh yes, good
We
one.
do need to talk about this one.
Yeah, nominees: Castlevania Nocturne, the Gran Turismo movie, The Last of Us show, the Super Mario Brothers movie, and the Twisted Metal show. Kind of a hallmark year in video game adaptations. I think we're only going to see this category explode in popularity as we move forward. I think the Super Mario Brothers movie and The Last of Us show in particular did a lot to show how successful these IP can be as cross-media franchises. Does The Last of Us take it, or does Mario take it? Because I
think-
feel it's between those two.
Oh, it's definitely between those two. It is definitely.
I don't know,
between
man.
Those two.
I'm hearing a lot of good things about Castlevania Nocturne. Like,
Really?
That's true, but I've heard nothing good about Twisted Metal or Gran Turismo in this.
Oh wait, wait. Twisted Metal's good.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Gran
yeah, it's good.
Turismo
Okay, good.
is whatever, from what I've heard. It's not. Gran Turismo is one of those movies where it's like, yep, that happened. This will definitely be on FX. So I if I were a betting man, I'd probably vote The Last of Us because it has both the critical reception and the audience reception.
Yeah.
Super Mario Bros. Movie does not have the critical reception. I will say that. Like I wouldn't say critics were harsh on it, but it was they were definitely more critical of it because, there's parts of that story very fast paced, a little too fast paced, and given some time to breathe. There were legitimate problems with that movie. The Last of Us, you could say there were also legitimate problems there, but I think overall it was way more well received. I mean, like, non-gamers were watching this show. Like, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of comes down to what I was talking about earlier. This is totally like commercial product versus kind of like prestige, critical, whatever you want to call that type of that type of product. And it's interesting because it's like now we have to identify as critics. Is there as much artistry in making something for families, making something light, making something that isn't an HBO production? Is there as much artistry in that as there is in the depth of The Last of Us? You know what I mean? And I think that's like a tough question to answer. I'm so curious to see what wins this because I really don't
same.
know. I think
really
this is
don't
one of
know
the
either.
biggest toss-ups of the whole show. It's a good competition there. It's interesting because they don't speak to each other at all. So even one being a movie and one being a show, I think is an interesting distinction. So yeah. Okay. Last chance. Any
I'm all good.
other?
Let's do most anticipated game to end it out with something stuff that's not out yet.
Great. Tris, I didn't even know that was on here. Okay, let's see. Most anticipated game. The nominees are Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Hades 2, Like a Dragon, Infinite Wealth, Star Wars Outlaws, and Tekken 8. I gotta tell you, not what I was expecting to see on this list.
No.
I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know what I was expecting to see. But
Well, I think
yeah.
I think my problem with most anticipated is I think it needs to be another one of those ones that like fans vote in and it has like the whole bracket.
You're
over,
right,
like,
Tris.
a week.
It does.
Because
Yeah.
you cannot narrow it
Yeah.
down to 6 because you're just gonna end up going with the biggest IPs. Like I can tell you confidently, I have not heard of Star Wars Outlaws. Everything else on here I've heard of. I've not heard of Star Wars Outlaws until I read it on here.
You weren't watching the Ubisoft show with us.
Yeah, I got stuck doing that. It was a pretty mid presentation, so I'm not excited for Star Wars Outlaws. Is there anything that, like, if I just asked you independently, what is your most anticipated game of next year, Tris? Paper Mario.
Yes.
Paper Mario, and then
Yeah.
Joey, Multiverses.
Yes, of course. I'll tell you, it's none of the games on this list. Maybe Hades
Yeah.
2, but I didn't
Metroid
even beat
Prime
the first
4.
stage. Right, that's not
like-
on the list because it still doesn't have a freaking year yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pisses
here's
me
the thing.
off.
Why isn't Silksong on here? With how much it trends every single event,
Well,
why is Silksong not on this list?
Because
For
I don't.
example.
Because I think
need a
all of
date.
these games have dates,
Yeah.
whether they be years or just specific dates. They all have dates, and I think that's
fair.
I think that's why it's not on here. Yeah, I think. But of course, we all know what's going to take this category. I think we all know.
Hades 2.
Nope.
Final Fantasy wins.
It's probably gonna be Final Fantasy 7. Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
though, out of these, Hades 2, dude. I can't wait for Hades 2. That game's gonna rip. Most anticipated otherwise, though, probably is. Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it's just like the concept of the Nintendo Switch 2. And then,
Yeah,
and
that's
then-
fair.
yeah, and then after that, because I'm a sicko, it is probably Multiverses. And then that Suicide Squad game, I'm pretty excited. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, this was fun. Obviously, the link will be in the description below, I'm sure, for all of the Game Awards 2023 nominees. I think we'll probably be back for some official Game Awards bets in the future, like we did last year. That was a lot of fun. But this was a great little discussion. I'm excited to see what wins this year. I think, like, there were so many games this year. Such a wide variety. Everybody has different favorites. I think this will be a more fun show to watch than usual, just because of the quality and the quantity of the titles here. I'm
Right.
kind of excited to see what wins, irrespective of surprise announcements, which I'm sure the Game Awards will have.
I'm looking
You know?
forward to potential surprise announcements because the presence here makes me think there's like for example, Nintendo feels that they have a bigger presence in these categories than usual. Makes me feel like Nintendo's going to be here and might have something here. Like,
man,
that's
I wonder
kinda
if
neat.
Nintendo. I wonder if Nintendo is worried that they won't win Game of the Year.
I wonder too.
They might.
You know what I mean?
They
I
shouldn't
wonder
be
if they're
worried.
having
Boy-
that conversation right now. Yeah.
Boy, Nintendo's making money off the wazoo. If they were worried about this, they need to get their priorities straight.
It's interesting. Man, those are 6 nice video games. Dear God.
Yeah, I think I do want to end with the fact that I think this is probably the first time I feel like I have a stake in all of the Game of the Year nominees. Like, I know a lot about each of these games. I've played a lot of these.
Yeah.
I like all
Yep.
like this is the first for me. It's a good feeling.
It's so funny. The one game I haven't played is the one I'm sure is going to take.
Yeah,
Game of the Year.
right.
Hey, listen, if you haven't played it yet, I can't recommend it enough. That is
Waiting for the
killer.
Switch 2 port. Let's go.
Yeah.
Listen, it's
Soon enough.
gonna rule. It's gonna rule on Switch too. All right, cool. Well, thank you everybody so much for tuning into this Game Explain discussion. I think we went longer than we meant to, but I think
Absolutely.
I think it was a great time. So if you made it to the end, I love you the most. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.